The content in this video is for general educational use. It does not represent political opinions or judgments about any country, culture, or government. Information is based on publicly available sources and may be summarized or simplified. Viewers should verify details through multiple sources.
What does it even mean to be Chilean today? You know, this isn't just some philosophical question. In Chile, it's literally a matter of life and death. We're about to dive into a national identity crisis that's so deep, it's pushing some people to make the ultimate sacrifice.
So, let me tell you about two young men, Matias Catrillo and Pablo Marchand. Their story is about a journey that, as this quote puts it, took them far away from Chilean national identity, an identity they came to completely reject. And we're not just talking about moving to a new city here. This was a total rejection of the country they were born in.
Now, this is where their story gets really unexpected. They were born in the capital, Santiago. They went to these elite high schools. I mean, they had every opportunity right in front of them. And yet, they turned their backs on that entire life. They rejected their national identity, declared themselves Mapuche, the largest indigenous group in the region, and ended up dying fighting for land rights hundreds of miles from home. So you have to ask, right? Why? Why would these educated young men from the city trade a bright future for a struggle that's been going on for centuries? Their story isn't just a personal tragedy. It's a huge red flag, a symptom of a much, much bigger crisis. What is going on in Chile that's pushing its own youth to such extremes? And don't think this is all ancient history. This is happening right now. Just recently, in 2023, Chileans voted down a new constitution. And what that means is they're still living under the old one, a document from the Pinochet dictatorship. And here's the kicker. That constitution doesn't even mention indigenous peoples. Not once. That failure at the ballot box is directly tied to the choices Matias and Pablo made. Okay, so what all of this really points to is a nation that is fundamentally, deeply divided. And to get to the bottom of this conflict, we've got to go back and see how this division even started in the first place. Yeah, to really understand this crisis, looking at today's headlines just isn't going to cut it. We have to rewind the clock way back, like centuries back, because the seeds of this division were planted when Chile itself was first being formed. All right, so our journey back in time begins at a place called the Unconquered Frontier, Araucania. Even the name tells you something, right? It just screams resistance, a long, bloody history. So take a look at this map from the 1600s. You can see the Spanish Kingdom of Chile here, and then south of it, that's Araucania. But that line between them, that wasn't just some polite border on a map. No way. It was a violent, bloody battleground that was fiercely defended for literally centuries. So how did this frontier even come to be? Well, when the Spanish showed up in the 1500s, they figured it would be an easy win. You know, a quick conquest. They were very wrong. In 1598, the Mapuche scored this massive victory at the Battle of Curalaba, and it just completely stopped the Spanish in their tracks. It was so decisive that the Spanish Empire basically had to accept the Biobío River as a formal border, officially admitting there was this huge piece of land they just could not conquer. So you see, the frontier wasn't just a place on a map. It was this intense stalemate, militarily and culturally, that went on for 300 years. And what that did was create two completely separate worlds, two different identities, living on the same land. This right here is the origin story of Chile's deep, deep division. Okay, so if you have this divided land, how on earth does it become one single modern country? Well, how they built that nation? That's where the conflict gets locked in for good. All right, let's fast forward all the way to today. After all that conflict, all that history, what does Chile actually look like now? Who lives there? Well, today, people who identify as Mapuche make up almost 10% of Chile's entire population. Think about that. That's nearly 1 out of every 10 people. We're not talking about a tiny group here. They're a really significant part of what makes up modern Chile. And this is the core problem, the huge contradiction at the heart of it all. On one hand, you have this massive indigenous population, and on the other, you have the country's most important legal document, its constitution, that pretends they don't even exist. It's a complete legal and political erasure. And just to put that in perspective for you, this makes Chile a real outlier in the region. I mean, look across all of Latin America. Almost every country recognizes its indigenous peoples in its constitution. Only Chile and Uruguay don't. It's kind of shocking to see in the 21st century. So what happens then? What happens when a country just refuses to write a huge part of its own identity into its national story? Well, you get a crisis. Simple as that.
Okay, so let's connect all these dots. First, you've got this colonial frontier that was never really resolved peacefully. It was settled by force. Then, you build a modern country on top of that, but you do it by legally ignoring a huge chunk of the population. And when you finally try to fix this mess, those efforts fail. So what's the result? The conflict over land, rights, and identity, it just explodes. You can draw a straight line from the 1500s right to the conflicts happening today. And that brings us right back to where we started, with Matías Catrileo and Pablo Marchant. Their radical decision to reject being Chilean, it wasn't just some isolated act. It was their answer to a question that the nation itself has refused to resolve. How can you be both Chilean and Mapuche when the state says only one of those identities really counts?
And so that's the question we're left with. It's the challenge that Chile is staring down right now. Can any nation really build a shared future on a contested past? After centuries of conflict and decades of denial, Chile is still searching for an answer.